Okay, so now on this one, I think preventative medicine. This is video 8. So this is literally just a book that I took up yesterday, which says ultra processed people. Why do we all eat stuff that isn't food, and why can't we stop? Okay, so I've just been reading a lot about this. So let me go back. In 2007, I heard that there was I don't want to use the word great famine, because it certainly wasn't great. They had this huge famine in Ethiopia where 1 million people starved to death. I was around at that time. 20 years later, I read an article which said that climate change was the biggest cause of that catastrophe. Okay. So then I started to look into everything about climate change and the role of the oil industry. And it was pretty obvious to me at that time, and it's since come out, that the oil industry knew all along that oil was going to create a problem. In fact, they really knew that in 1981. Okay, because Exxon had done some research into it, and their predictions were very similar to the IPCC. There was a guy called James Hansen, who is a leading scientist. His predictions are remarkably accurate in terms of what's happened to the climate. There is a real fear with that at some stage we will reach a tipping point. And so I don't want to scaremonger here. I'm going to be attacked for it and everything else, but no scientists really know when the tipping point is. Although there is another book that I'm reading right now that is actually talking about billions, not just millions, but millions of people being on the move because of that. Hence the micro dam in Eritrea, and the political message behind that was that we really need to have a green revolution. Right. A year ago now, roughly, I went to the doctor and I found out that I think 6.5 is diabetic, technically diabetic, but I was 6.4, so I was virtually diabetic, but I was pre-diabetic. And so then I decided to read up about it, and basically, if you lose 50 kilograms, then you can probably, if you're pre-diabetic, certainly, then you can probably reverse the condition, and probably you can reverse it very, very quickly, almost within 3 or 4 weeks. So 4 weeks later, lost 15 kilograms, didn't pay for any special diets, just followed a pretty strict process, I guess, and I'm now no longer pre-diabetic. But this then led me on. I started reading up about it, and then started reading about inflammation, and that if you're pre-diabetic, that causes loads of inflammation. If you're diabetic, that causes even more inflammation, and then that creates problems for your whole system. And then as I started reading about it, and it was things like ultra-processed food is making society sick, and that's why we're becoming sicker and sicker. Probably one of the most startling figures you can utilise, that there are thousands of these, is that 93% of all Americans have metabolic dysfunction, or let's throw another stat at you, sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Now, so basically, if you have an ultra-processed diet for a period of time, then very quickly you are going to become ill. And this is one of the leading causes of the rise in dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, inflammation, cardiovascular problems, etc., etc. So, therefore, preventive medicine is absolutely key. And I can just quote you the American figures, because I'm not sure about the UK figures. But fundamentally, 75% of the cost of the American NHS system, where they spend $17,000 per head, right, and where they have falling life expectancy, in America right now, is the fact that 93% of all Americans have metabolic syndrome. So this thing is going to create huge, enormous problems for their society in the future. There's going to be a massive rise in dementia. There's going to be a massive rise in Alzheimer's. And basically, it's really saying that food, that food can be medicine. Right, this is now what they're trying to find out. Now, okay, so just take my sample size of one, of what happened with me. It didn't cost the NHS anything. Okay, they had to do my bloods, they had to find out that I was pre-diabetic. But actually, when I went on the process, right, it didn't cost them anything. And now if I'd been diabetic, it's also going to cost them quite a lot of money over time. But if you scale it up on a massive scale, 75% of all the American costs are preventable because 93% of them have metabolic disease, and this is even now going down to kids who are going to have cirrhosis of the liver because they have too much sugar, which is notably an alcoholic or drinking too much alcohol type disease. So all I can say is what's happened to me is that I've got twice the amount of energy. I'm 60 years old now, but I'm hitting times on the rowing machine. I've never been a great athlete, but I'm hitting times on the rowing machine that I was hitting when I was 30 years old. So it's sort of pretty extraordinary. And the food companies know this, that they're producing food that isn't really food, right? It has no nutritional value. In fact, it makes it even worse if you do eat it. And then I looked at this, then I looked at the oil companies. Obviously, they were lying about climate change. The tobacco companies saying that smoking wasn't addictive. The food companies that produce this food that's completely ridiculous, that's making everyone ill. The rise of all these various diseases, and then the pharmaceutical. As our countries become iller, the pharmaceutical companies make more and more money, but no pharmaceutical companies going out there and say, actually, the best way of solving all these problems is to fix your diet. And what happens in your gut here would also affect your brain. Now, probably the most transformative book for this was a book by, I think it's called Hacking the American Mind. Was a book by Dr. Robert Lustig, who basically says that sugar gives you a dopamine hit, and so every single time you have it, this creates more dopamine in your system, and therefore you crave it by even more. So in effect, we're all drug addicts on sugar, which means, and then that creates a problem. And I'm going to be attacked now. So, look, Charlie, look, why can't we take our kids to McDonald's? Why can't we do all this? Fine, yeah, you can do that, but the nation should have the necessary information so they can make the right decisions. And also, if sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, then actually you can understand why people do eat too much, which creates all sorts of health problems down the line. So video 8 is about preventive medicine, and this is a discussion that we need to have. I never hear this being discussed in Parliament. Thank you.